he knows some of our country's darkest secrets, having served as a commander on a counterterrorism task force. Now he's turned some of his adventures into a thrilling story of fiction. Please welcome to the show, Gary Edgington.
Yay!
Gary!
Hey, thank you for having me on.
It is our honor, Gary.
Yes, thank you for being here, Gary.
The honor is mine, I assure you.
Yes. So you got into law enforcement because your dad was an officer, but unfortunately he was actually killed in the line of duty. So did that ever scare you away from this type of work?
Well, actually, no, it didn't. Dad was my hero. He enlisted in the Coast Guard at age 17 in 1942, was all over the Pacific. I grew up in his shadow, and there was no way I was going to. I'd worked too hard to get to that spot, and there was no way I was going to walk away from it. And I know that I felt his presence many times in my life, the angel on my shoulder, if you will.
Wow. Gary, it's so good to see you. I wanted to ask you kind of a difficult question emotionally. Having suffered such a tragic loss so early in your career, how did you personally cope with that grief? Because people turn to different things.
Well, the honest truth is I didn't really. I basically was forced to kind of hitch up my pants and keep moving forward. Yeah. You know, I can vividly recall one instance when we were at the funeral home to pick out the casket, and up until that point I had not cried at all or anything. And when it happened, I looked at the casket, and I just said, "Oh my God, they're going to put my dad in a box." And I started crying, and the sergeant that was with me put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Gary, you got to buck up. Your mom's here." But this whole thing was so awful because my dad was working in Marina del Rey in this idyllic place. He was attacked by a crazy guy armed with a knife who was supposed to be in jail for trying to kill 2 other people a year before. My dad got 1 shot into him, and he didn't even break stride. And literally, and I mean literally, he butchered my father. Truly.
Oh my word.
And I mean, and knowing, you know, being in the business, I understand all of it now even more than I did then, and it's pretty horrific. And you know, the truth be told, I mean, I needed counseling, but I got nothing. Nobody, you know, I was off the academy for about a week, and then I was back into it, you know, and I never had any sort of grief counseling, even meet with a clergy member or anything. And which is probably, you know, impossible to understand now, but that's sort of the way it was back then, you know. And mental health seeking mental health was certainly stigmatized, and I believe it still is to this day. And I know that you guys are in the forefront of encouraging people to seek help. And it took me a very long time to realize that I'd been carrying a lot of anger and grief and confusion and sadness for decades. Wow. And I finally went to a doctor and got some help, and it was almost like switching a light switch on. Wow. If I was talking to you about this before I went there, my voice would be choked with emotion over 40 years later.
Wow.
Gary,
thank you for that.
So hard.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story. I think it's so important to so many people.
Especially men.
Absolutely, absolutely. Older men, including myself. Let's get to your book, Outside the Wire. It's about a retired LAPD detective who serves in Iraq. Now, Gary, we know each other. That's a little similar to your life. So is Rick based on you?
Well, yes and no. People at the gym used to come up to me that had read the book and said, "Hey, I hear your voice. I hear the jokes that you crack all the time." But the book is really far more than that, because it's an amalgam of my experiences not only in Iraq, but running a counterterrorism task force, working in the world of intelligence and organized crime and narcotics, and having worked internal affairs and worked some high-profile cases like the Billionaire Boys Club case, the insurance commissioner case in California, and the O.J. Simpson case. All of those things contributed to the book in various ways, and some maybe very subtly and others maybe not so subtly.
Gary, thank you so much for your service.
That's what people are writing
Honestly,
right now.
yeah, our viewers, everyone, listen, our viewers want to learn more, but luckily you guys can, because we have Outside the Wire. It is available right now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And for more information, you can visit Gary's website, GaryEddingtonAuthor.com. Gary, we appreciate you.
Thank you for your courage in talking about that. That's a tough guy saying you should have got mental
It's
help.
true. Congratulations.
After my dad died. Absolutely. You're a tough guy. Appreciate you, man.
We'll be right back. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, sir.
One of my
Take
favorite
care.
people.
God bless.
Thanks.